Because it's the third time we've ever seen an interstellar object. And interstellar doesn't just mean Matthew McConaughey, it means something not from our solar system. It's interstellar, it's between suns.
It started with a flicker on a telescope feed, then another and another. Within days, astronomers around the world realized the unthinkable. 4 separate objects, all inbound, all on trajectories that cross Earth's orbital path within weeks of each other. Their identities are still being confirmed, their origins unknown. But what's certain is this: they are closing in fast from different corners of the sky, and every one of them is visible now to the telescopes watching. The sudden convergence. At first, it looked like a data overlap, 4 faint trails crossing the same region of the night sky. The initial reports came from separate observatories, one in Chile, one in Arizona, one in Namibia, and another from the Mount Lemmon survey in southern Arizona. Each team thought they had discovered a new comet or asteroid, but when the data was merged, a pattern emerged that shouldn't have existed. 4 distinct bodies, each moving on its own path, were all converging toward the inner solar system at the same time. Their trajectories weren't parallel, they were spiraling inward from different angles, as if drawn by a shared gravitational corridor. NASA's Minor Planet Center flagged the anomaly immediately. Within hours, international alerts went out to verify the coordinates. Infrared tracking confirmed the objects were real, and they were active. 2 displayed growing tails, faint but visible even through mid-sized telescopes. The third was unusually bright, outshining predictions by almost 3 magnitudes. The fourth showed no glow at all, a dark, fast object reflecting almost no sunlight, moving silently through the void. The realization struck quickly. This wasn't a coincidence. Comets and asteroids rarely cluster so tightly in timing and orbital entry. Statistical models placed the odds at less than 1 in 50 million. Yet there they were, 4 bodies, all on inbound trajectories toward Earth's orbital region. As the observatories confirmed the data, media outlets began to pick up fragments of the story, whispers of multiple inbound visitors, and a rare cosmic alignment. But within the scientific community, the tone wasn't excitement. It was caution, because 3 of these objects had already been catalogued, and 1 hadn't. The first was familiar, the second newly awakened, the third faint and green, and the fourth, the one that wasn't supposed to exist, had no cometary tail at all. Something dark was coming with them, the Green Wanderer. The first object to be identified was small, fast, and strikingly luminous. A comet that, when its faint signature was enhanced through spectral analysis, glowed in a deep emerald hue. Its official designation was C2025P1, but among astronomers, it quickly earned a simpler name, the Green Wanderer. Spectral readings revealed the cause of its color, diatomic carbon, a molecule that emits green light when excited by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. The phenomenon itself wasn't rare, but what unsettled researchers was the comet's intensity. The emission was far stronger than expected for an object of its size, bright enough to be visible even against the glare of the inner solar system. It seemed to be drawing in energy faster than it should, as though some internal process was amplifying the sunlight it received. The Green Wanderer's orbit was long and looping, an elegant arc that brought it in from the distant edge of the solar system. But when mapped alongside the other inbound objects, its path wasn't random. It fit perfectly into the same narrow corridor that all 4 were traveling through. To planetary scientists, that corridor looked almost constructed, like a gravitational channel carved through invisible boundaries. Radar and optical data showed the comet's core to be unusually compact, dense enough to survive solar heating that should have torn it apart. Each day, it brightened incrementally, defying predictions of disintegration. The more it approached, the more its color deepened, shifting from pale mint to a concentrated electric green, the hallmark of molecular excitation. The Green Wanderer became the first to make headlines, a spectacle in the sky that seemed harmless, even beautiful. Yet behind every telescope, the data painted a more complex truth. Its energy curve was climbing exponentially, not linearly. Something in that frozen nucleus was reacting far too quickly, like a system preparing for ignition. It wasn't just reflecting sunlight anymore, it was responding to it. The long-tailed intruder, The second object revealed itself slowly, a faint smear of light near the constellation Virgo that deepened night after night until even small backyard telescopes could detect it. This one was unmistakably a comet, its glowing arc stretching millions of kilometers behind it, a filament of dust and vapor visible even from Earth's surface. It was eventually catalogued as Comet Lemon, C 2023A3, but within the observatory logs, it earned another description, the long-tailed intruder. Unlike the Green Wanderer, Lemon wasn't new to science. It had been discovered years earlier, expected to fade into the darkness of its long orbit before returning centuries later. But something changed. Instead of dimming, it had reignited with an intensity unseen in modern cometary observation. Its coma expanded faster than any model predicted, forming a tail so immense that astronomers measured it at nearly 100 million kilometers in length, long enough to stretch from the Sun halfway to Mars. What disturbed researchers most wasn't its brightness, but its trajectory. Lemon wasn't following the same graceful path it had been charted on. Small, precise deviations began appearing, unexplainable adjustments that kept it perfectly aligned with the same orbital corridor shared by the Green Wanderer and two other unidentified objects. The pattern repeated with mathematical precision. Spectrographic analysis revealed something stranger still. The coma contained elevated levels of sodium and iron, far above what any solar heating model could produce. That meant the object was eroding from within, not from solar impact, as though internal pressure was being released in steady intervals. To casual observers, Lemon appeared as a magnificent visitor, a streak of light crossing the heavens. To those studying its data, it looked like an engine firing, a body actively maintaining a controlled drift. Its movements were deliberate, its tail too symmetrical to be random, and its energy output nearly synchronized with the first comet's fluctuations. Whatever was guiding it wasn't gravity alone. Something had set the long-tailed intruder on a course that mirrored another world's rhythm, a silent synchronization now pulsing through two comets moving as one. The split light. The third object entered observation quietly, just a faint reflection at first, caught in the overlapping exposures of two telescopes in Chile and South Africa. But when its orbit was plotted, astronomers realized it wasn't like the others. This one had no steady brightness, no smooth curve of reflection. It flickered. Every few hours, its light would dim to near invisibility and then flare again, doubling in intensity. When spectral imaging stabilized, the object was confirmed as Comet Tsuchinshan Atlas, C 2023A3, and one of the most watched comets of the decade. Yet the data emerging from this new observation run suggested something had changed dramatically. The core was no longer behaving like a solid nucleus of ice and rock. Instead, it appeared fractured, almost hollow, radiating from two distinct heat sources orbiting one another inside the same coma. The twin emissions gave Tsuchinshan RT-LAS a strange, almost artificial symmetry. Its light curve formed a clean sine wave, rising and falling with exact periodicity. Every spike aligned with a narrow radio fluctuation picked up by the Deep Space Network, faint but consistent across multiple stations. The pattern was not random noise. It carried phase intervals that mirrored the same 9-hour energy pulse previously seen in 3I Atlas, the interstellar visitor still being tracked far beyond Mars. Analysts considered the possibility of a binary nucleus, two fragments orbiting a shared center. But the coherence of the output, the stability of the light pulses, and the synchronized oscillations suggested coordination, not chaos. Even as its body shed dust, the comet's structure held perfectly steady, maintaining brightness levels impossible for a disintegrating fragment. As Tsuchinshan Atlas brightened, telescopes began to notice something even more uncanny. Its tail wasn't curving naturally with the solar wind. It bent at fixed angles, almost geometric, as though guided by magnetic tension lines invisible to the naked eye. By now, 3 inbound objects had been confirmed, all arriving within the same celestial window, all displaying behavior that challenged the mechanics of natural motion. And somewhere between them, far beyond the reach of sunlight, a 4th object was closing in, one that didn't glow at all, the silent one, asteroid 2024, YR4. The 4th object was not discovered through light, but through absence. Unlike the 3 comets before it, this one reflected almost nothing. It appeared as a faint void on starfield imagery, an area where background light was simply gone. Only through radar mapping did its outline emerge, a compact, irregular body roughly 200 meters across, tumbling silently through the void at extraordinary speed. It was designated 2024 YR4, an Apollo-type near-Earth asteroid first detected late last year. At the time, its trajectory placed it safely beyond Earth's influence. But when new data from the Goldstone radar array arrived, its course had changed, slightly, subtly, yet enough to reclassify it as a potentially hazardous object. The adjustment wasn't the result of gravitational drag or solar radiation pressure. Its orbit had shifted by measurable degrees, as though a force had acted upon it from within. Further analysis revealed another anomaly. The asteroid's radar reflection varied rhythmically, brightening and fading every 9 hours, an interval already associated with the energy pulses of the 3 inbound comets. Its rotation period matched that cycle exactly. To astronomers, that defied probability. There was no physical reason for a solid rock to synchronize its spin with distant comets on unrelated paths. Spectral backscatter hinted at surface metals, nickel, cobalt, and traces of iridium, materials often found in high-temperature alloys rather than primitive asteroids. Some suggested 2024 YR4 might be a fragment of an older interstellar body, a relic propelled into a shared orbital corridor with the comets. Others whispered about control, an artificial core hidden within what appeared to be stone. As it neared the inner solar system, the object's velocity remained constant, unaffected by solar heating or planetary perturbation. It traveled straight, unwavering, through the same invisible corridor that bound the other 3. It emitted no light, no gas, no tail, only silence. Yet to the instruments listening across the world, that silence was deafening. 4 bodies were now inbound, aligned not by chance, but by rhythm, their trajectories locked together like components of a single colossal pattern. Something had orchestrated this convergence, and the smallest of them, the one without light, was leading the way. The pattern emerges. When all 4 trajectories were mapped together, the randomness vanished. Each object, Lemon, Swan, Tsuchinshan Atlas, and 2024 YR4, occupied a distinct orbit, yet their timing, inclination, and resonance aligned too precisely to dismiss. Every few days, their positions formed geometric symmetry when viewed from the sun's reference frame, first a triangle, then a near-perfect cross. The pattern repeated every cycle, expanding outward like a cosmic metronome. Astrodynamicists began calling it the harmonic corridor. Whatever invisible gravitational architecture guided these bodies, it appeared to be shaping their movement with eerie precision. The objects were not approaching Earth along independent paths. They were converging through phases, each entering the inner solar system at calculated interval, like components of a synchronized system. When orbital simulation models were run backwards, the pattern held. Traced centuries into the past, all 4 paths intersected a single region beyond the heliopause, an uncharted pocket of interstellar space where solar radiation pressure collapses into near-zero equilibrium. That region had no known origin objects, no stable resonances, and no record of captured debris. Yet from that same dark void, 4 distinct travelers had emerged, aligned like signals on the same frequency. Thermal and radio data added more strangeness. The intervals between each comet's energy surges were harmonically linked, multiples of the same 9-hour period first observed in 3 I-Atlas months earlier. Even the non-emitting asteroid 2024 YR4 pulsed faintly in radar reflectivity at the same cadence. 4 separate bodies, 4 different compositions, all beating to one celestial rhythm. In internal reports circulated among NASA, ESA, and CNSA, the phrasing grew cautious. Terms like coincidental alignment were replaced by synchronous resonance and, in one redacted briefing, possible inter-object correlation. The implication was clear. These bodies were not simply sharing space, they were sharing timing. The harmonic corridor was behaving less like an accident of gravity and more like a coordinated entry sequence. If that were true, then Earth wasn't just watching a cluster of inbound comets and one rogue asteroid. It was witnessing the approach of a pattern, a formation, and it was closing in fast. The orbital window and the approach toward Earth. By early October, the 4 objects had entered what astronomers called the orbital window, the section of their trajectories that carried them across Earth's orbital plane. It was the phase when predictions tightened, when minor variations could mean the difference between a safe pass and a close encounter. What unnerved researchers wasn't their proximity alone, but their synchronization. Each was set to cross near Earth's path within days of one another, despite traveling from vastly different regions of space. The Green Wanderer would pass first, slicing through the pre-dawn sky with a vivid green arc, visible even to the naked eye. Comet Lemon would follow 2 days later, trailing its enormous tail through the same sector of space. Tsuchinshan Atlas, the split-light object, was projected to pass next, its twin cores rotating in measured unison. And finally, the silent asteroid, 2024 YR4, would drift through the same corridor, only a few 100,000 kilometers beyond the Moon's orbit. Orbital probability models showed no direct collision threats, but the clustering was without precedent. 4 independent near-Earth crossings, all within a 7-day window, defied every statistical model used to predict celestial encounters. For agencies tasked with planetary defense, that convergence was more than coincidence. It was a test of readiness. Ground-based radar began operating around the clock. The Goldstone and Arecibo arrays scanned continuously, searching for any sign of anomalous acceleration or unaccounted forces. At the same time, magnetometers picked up faint surges in low-frequency background noise, subtle but rhythmic, echoing the same 9-hour pattern found in the object's earlier emissions. The orbital corridor, once thought empty, began to glow faintly in infrared maps. Dust, ions, and charged particles lingered in its wake, tracing an invisible filament between the 4 bodies as though connecting them through an unseen conduit. To the public, it was a rare spectacle, a week of cosmic beauty. To those analyzing the data behind locked doors, it was something else entirely. 4 objects, arriving in sequence, moving through a shared energy field, and passing dangerously close to the planet that happened to be watching. The alignment wasn't just perfect, it was intentional. The atmospheric disturbances. As the first of the 4 objects approached perihelion, instruments on Earth began to record subtle but consistent changes in the upper atmosphere. At first, the variations were minor: fluctuations in ionospheric density, slightly elevated auroral activity, and interference across high-frequency communication bands. But as Comet Lemon and the Green Wanderer crossed into near-Earth range, those disturbances grew measurable and synchronized with their orbital rhythm. The anomalies followed the same repeating 9-hour cycle detected in the comet's emissions. Satellite magnetometers recorded micropulses in the geomagnetic field, faint but global, occurring at identical intervals across multiple monitoring networks. Meteorological agencies noticed irregular temperature gradients forming in the mesosphere, thin bands of charged air shifting across longitudes as if being stirred from above. While the general public attributed the strange auroras and sporadic radio disruptions to solar storms, the solar observatories themselves were confused. The sun was quiet, no coronal mass ejections, no flares. The disturbances were coming from somewhere else, entering Earth's magnetosphere from an angle inconsistent with solar wind direction. Ground-based LiDAR systems in Alaska and northern Europe recorded elevated particle ionization. Around the same time, the comets passed their closest points to Earth's orbit. The readings hinted at an invisible wavefront preceding each object, energy spreading through space before the comets physically arrived, as though the surrounding environment was reacting in anticipation of their presence. By the time Tsuchinshan Atlas crossed into observation range, the auroras stretched farther south than recorded in decades, shimmering red and green over latitudes that never saw polar light. Electromagnetic interference disrupted navigation satellites for brief interval, and radio astronomers reported broadband static pulses aligning perfectly with the passage of the objects overhead. To meteorologists, it was an atmospheric event. To astrophysicists, it was an energy signature, something external resonating with Earth's field. The final approach and the global response. As the fourth and final object neared Earth's orbital boundary, the world entered a state of quiet vigilance. Space agencies that rarely cooperated began working in unison. Radar arrays, deep space telescopes, and classified satellite systems were synchronized into a single network, tracking the inbound quartet as they moved through the last segment of their journey. Public statements described it as a rare celestial alignment, but the internal tone was anything but celebratory. The first three objects, Lemon, Swan, and Tsuchinshan Atlas, had passed without incident, leaving behind spectral trails of ionized particles that persisted far longer than predicted. Each crossing was accompanied by short-lived fluctuations in the planet's magnetic field, measurable but unexplained. The data formed repeating sequences, harmonic patterns that echoed across the upper atmosphere, as if the comets were tuning Earth's electromagnetic shell. Then came 2024 YR4, the smallest and darkest of the four. Unlike the comets, it produced no visible trail and emitted almost no reflected light. Instruments captured it only through radar backscatter, a dim pulse that grew fainter with every scan. Despite its silence, it followed the exact corridor carved by the others, maintaining velocity and alignment within microscopic margins. As it entered the Moon's orbital radius, the magnetic disturbances intensified. Satellite telemetry faltered briefly, and low-frequency instruments recorded a single global resonance, an electromagnetic wave that encircled the planet once before fading into static. When 2024 YR4 cleared its closest approach, all four bodies vanished from detection. Optical systems showed only empty sky. Infrared scanners registered no heat signatures, and radar reflection lines flattened into noise. Within minutes, the tracking corridor that had guided them for months dissolved, leaving nothing but residual ionization shimmering faintly across the night. Official reports concluded the objects had passed safely and were continuing outward, though none of the agencies could locate them again. In sealed scientific memos, the language was different. The data suggested termination, not departure. 4 signals ending at the same timestamp, as if the sequence itself had been completed. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.